And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. You were in Vermont over the weekend. Fun times, I imagine. Cool craft Vermonty kind of beer and cool Vermont cheddar burgers and things like that, I imagine.
Did everything, Evan. Went to a farmer's market, got some double IPA. Yeah, it was great. Typical. Didn't go to Ben and Jerry's. We weren't able to make it there, but all considered, had a little Cabot cheddar. It all works out. So, we checked off a lot of the stuff, and again, right up the highway. So a nice little 3-hour jump. We'll go again another time and go to Ben and Jerry's. Haven't been there yet, but yes, as you said, great weekend to get away.
You can go to the Ben and Jerry's in Framingham. It's the same thing.
That is true. Exactly. Same difference. So
anyways, the pictures are great. Looked like a fun time. I always forget about Vermont. Not like it's like irrelevant, but it's just, it's a quiet state, but it has a lot of cool little breweries in it and stuff.
Top 3 New England state, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, probably is.
That Maine are in the top 3. Sorry to everyone else, but
no, I agree. Maine is Maine's like probably
Maine's number 1. over. No, Mass is king. Come on.
Okay, Massachusetts is king. Maine is close though. Maine is the way life should be. I believe that. Anyways, Bruins stuff. Bruins news. I wouldn't say things quiet down this week because as we kind of sit here waiting for the David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron news to drop, whether they decide to stay or decide to come back or just never come back. But it was an interesting thing. Kevin Paul DuPont wrote over the weekend in the Globe on how Johnny Gaudreau choosing Columbus and the deal he took, $9.75 million annually over 7 years, stunned everybody. Going to Columbus, Ohio, of all places. But again, I feel like everyone who's been to Columbus is like, it's a cool city. Like, it's a cool place, it gets overlooked because it's Ohio. And it's always like the butt end of every joke. But like, the fans are passionate there. I will give them that. Like the Blue Jackets fans do, like playoff games there do seem very cool. I remember when the Bruins were there in 2019, it looked really sick. But it's interesting how it might affect David Pastrnak's earnings. Because again, they're comparable wingers. Pastrnak's a little bit better of a goal scorer. Gaudreau's a better setup guy, but similar-ish tier of wings, I would say. And again, we look at Charlie McAvoy, what he makes, $9.5 million. Pastrnak has every right to make the same or more. Is there a chance that Gaudreau actually could have lowered the market for wings? Like, could this save the Bruins a little bit of money potentially?
I think it can in terms of the Bruins and the fear of him going to market. That being said, let's say we get to the worst case scenario and we get to next summer and Pastrnak hasn't signed an extension and wants to go to market. The Bruins don't trade him by that point, which I have to imagine if they find out that he is going to market, then I don't think they want him to walk for free. I still would not be surprised at all if Pastrnak, gets on the market and someone gives him 10.5, 11 and a half. You have to imagine.
Yeah.
I think it is definitely a surprise in terms of as soon as they announced that Gaudreau was going to Columbus, I think I forgot who first broke it, but it was, Gaudreau picked Columbus. Okay, what's the contract? 'Cause I think we were all imagining, all right, if he's not going to Calgary and he wants to go somewhere else, it's not a place with hometown ties like Philly or the Islanders or anywhere close by. He's probably getting what, 12 million, 12 and a half. So I think
that was what I thought.
Yeah, I think so. That was the most surprising thing is just what the payout was for him to go to Columbus. So I think it definitely helps the Bruins in terms of maybe setting Pasternak's value a little bit. But that being said, I think you look at it's so tough to just predict this market too, because going to this free agency, do we think guys like Goodbranson were getting 4 and 4 for contracts? Like you've seen quite a bit this year, especially of people throwing a ton of money at, defensemen or what have you. If a guy like Pasternak's on the market and he's a guy that scores goals, can give you 40 goals easily year in, year out if he's healthy, is a really marketable player, has that offensive flair, I think there'd be a lot of teams, if they have cap space, would be lining up to pay him double digits per year. So definitely helps that, let's say Gaudreau didn't set a new tier of, let's say it's, 12 and a half, 13 million, of course.
You mean David money?
Yeah, that'd be, it's good in terms of, it's not something that Pastrnak and his agents like JP Barry can look at and be like, all right, like, I know you want to stay with Boston and they want you back. But I'm just saying you could probably get 9.5 from them, or, there's 13 million waiting out there. They don't have that actual barometer of that tier in front of them, which I think helps out the Bruins. But it's all going to come down to, I think, the ball's in Pasternak's court in terms of what he wants, because if he wants to stay here, he is going to get paid. It's just, resisting the temptation of what could be out there if he wanted to hit free agency in 2023.
You can go to Detroit and make $13 million a year. Have fun in Detroit, Michigan. It is interesting with the Flames in the sense that, again, we don't obviously cover the Calgary Flames. So we are not as familiar with the inner workings of that team. But I am interested in, like, this past year, if there was any indication from Gaudreau that, hey, I want to go home. I'm not interested in staying, because it's tough. And it would have been a tough thing for the Flames to do, to have to trade Gaudreau, because they were gunning for a cup. That was a really good team. And to give, it's kind of like how the Bruins were with Torrey Krug in 2019, 2020, where they're going for a cup. They're the President's Trophy team. And, you'd like to get something for Krug, but you also kind of want his contributions during the postseason. I think it was the same thing with Johnny Gaudreau in this past postseason. I don't think the Bruins will have the same problem, right? Because I don't think the Bruins are going to be a top tier team this year. I don't think anybody thinks that. And I think they're going to have a good idea come training camp if they're going to re-sign Pastrnak, if they're far apart, or if Pastrnak says, you know what, I want to go somewhere else, which, again, there's no indication that he wants to go anywhere else. But if he does start to say, hey, I'd love to make the most amount of money, that's not going to come from the Bruins, most likely. It's going to probably come from somewhere else. Then you trade him. And I think that's why the Bruins are actually not in the worst position here. Obviously, you do not want to trade David Pastrnak. I want to make that very clear. Nobody wants to do that. But if they can't come to an agreement, if that looks like he wants to go somewhere else, then they're in a good spot where they can do it. Again, you're probably not competing for a cup next year. That would be a really bad start to the year without Pastrnak and Marchand and McAvoy and potentially Grzelcyk. I mean, that's a rough first couple months, rough full year. But at least you would get something for him. Whereas Calgary just lost Johnny Gaudreau.
Yeah, that's devastating.
Gone.
Yeah, no, it's not good. That's the worst case scenario. And it's one where, as you said with Krug, the parallels, or that team was gunning for a championship. You're not going to remove him, even if, that's one where you trade Krug at the time in the middle of it. And the venom, the vitriol that comes in the next 2-3 years of giving up an asset like Krug in the middle of that win now window, that's going to be there a lot longer than maybe 7-8 years down the line. We're like, oh, look at all this stuff we got for Krug. Yeah, it kind of sucked. Like, you're always going to have that narrative or that second guess in the back of your mind when you subtract from a team that's trying to win now. So that one, yeah, it's tough to draw parallels between that and, let's say, what they're reaching now with Pastrnak, where you look at what the Flames right now, where even if that team still has good pieces to build around and they had a great defensive foundation, if you lose a guy like Gaudreau, 100-point guy, a guy who's so great, especially at even strength, for nothing, devastating. Like, you can't have that for a team that looked like it was really building towards something. And now, as soon as Gaudreau signed with Columbus, what were all like the columns that immediately came out? It was like, do the Flames just blow it up? Like, that shows you how quickly, like, the fortunes of a franchise can change when you let an asset like Gaudreau just walk for nothing.
When the window completely shuts. And it's funny, obviously everyone's kind of been crapping on the Bruins lately because of prospects and things like that. But the reality is the fact that the Bruins have left a cup window open now since like 2007 until now is mind-blowing. It really is mind-blowing. The cup window. I mean, I know, like, right now the cup window is not fully really open, but they're still competing for a playoff spot. Like, the Flames may have to blow it up. Again, they could also use that space to do other things. They could, I don't know what you do in that situation. You tread water next year because they have Markstrom in net. Kachuk's good, and they got good players. I know a lot of people around here always wonder about, like, Sean Monahan. So maybe this will be the year,
Evan. He finally breaks through.
It's like who was it? It was Jonas Brodin from the Wild for a while. That was, like, supposed to be a Bruin for so long.
Yes.
Right? And there was Gabe Landeskog, Brandon Carlo for Gabe Landeskog straight up, which now in retrospect might have been a pretty good deal for the Bruins way back then. But before we get into David Krejci stuff, we want to tell you about our new partner over at Athletic Greens. They have a product I use literally every day. Literally every day. I started taking AG1 because I wanted better gut health and more energy. I actually do not drink coffee or use caffeine. I don't. I know, like, Conor, that's crazy to you. I don't use coffee. I'm a mad lad. I go straight off what I got in the tank. Because I like healthier natural energy, and Athletic Greens has been providing it in droves. It doesn't taste like it's super healthy or anything either. It has a mild tropical taste that I actually look forward to each and every morning. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75, yes, 75 high quality, but I can't even cut that on my fingers. High quality vitamins, minerals, whole foods, sourced ingredients, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things, because you and I, Connor, a lot of aging. It's clearly it's lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting really good. This all supports better sleep quality and mental clarity. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Again, it's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. It is so easy. This is so simple. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, our friends at Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Again, that's free. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Bruins. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/Bruins to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Again, athleticgreens.com/Bruins. Look forward to using them more. They're terrific. I've been loving it lately. It's awesome stuff. I've about blasting with energy, really. I mean, just woo, so great. Actually, it does make my stomach feel better. So I will give them that. Anyways, moving along. An interesting thing of last week that I don't think we really saw coming. We were prepped for free agency, Montgomery's presser, development camp, trades. A trade broke last week. The trade was 1-for-1, Erik Haula for Pavel Zacha. And there's some interesting takeaways from the Pavel Zacha thing, right? The contract is up for arbitration. There's where he fits in lineup, which we've kind of covered. But an interesting thing I keep coming across is, it seems like Patrice Bergeron is definitely coming back, right? At some point, the contract, will be incentive laden, low AAV, unless something drastic happens, it feels like he's pretty much back, especially given like every single player and prospect and like Zacha, but like, oh, I can't wait to play with him in training camp. So he'd be letting a lot of people down if he didn't come back.
Not great.
Yeah, not great. But Krejci's a different kind of thing because Krejci's, again, was in the Czech last year. It would require moving his family back across the world. It's a different dynamic to that where, again, Sweeney said the conversations are good, but you never really know. And if Krejci doesn't return, is Zacha a good enough 2C? Is that an upgrade over Erik Haula or even like a Charlie Coyle?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things where I don't think we really know until he's put in that spot. And I think it's something we talked about when we first were grading the Zacha trade where, listen, if he's your third line left wing and he's with Charlie Coyle and Craig Smith, I think that's a home run of a trade in terms of you're getting a younger player who you could probably have under a longer term deal, whatever his new contract is as an RFA. But that's the spot for him, and he can work with Coyle and Smith. I think you have a lot of value there. If he's your 2C, a little bit tougher of a grade, right? Like that's one where if you're already moving on from Haula, which as we've said before, are the Bruins at their best when Haula's the 2C? No. They needed an upgrade there, which is why we've talked about Krejci so much. But you at least knew what you're going to get with Haula there, that if he's with Haula and Pastrnak, he's going to at the very least be productive. I don't know if he's going to be a 80-point guy, but he's pretty much playing at like a 70-point pace once he was with those guys. And who knows, maybe you put Zacha with Taylor Hall and David Pastrnak. I would not be surprised if his numbers jump up quite a bit. Right. But It's also one of those things where you don't know for sure if his style play exactly is going to mesh as well, because you could make the argument that in terms of overall talent and skills that Charlie Coyle is a better center than Erik Haula, but it just didn't mesh nearly as well. So who knows how Zacha is, who's also more of a, big bodied center, who's a little bit different than a guy like Haula who plays with a lot more pace and style play like that. So can Zacha play 2C? Of course he can, but I think in terms of maximizing the value, it's better served further down the lineup. But that's all going to, depend on what the dominoes fall in terms of Bergeron and Krejci, in terms of where exactly they are. So Zacha, a solid backup option, but if he's the overall plan, and then Krejci's just a hopeful development in terms of we hope it works out, then you're okay. It's one of those situations where maybe you're just looking at switching out Haula just in terms of his age and how long you want him in place for. But Zacha's still a bit more of a wild card in that regard.
He is a wild card. I also am interested, though, in his history with Pastrnak. They played together in the World Juniors. And again, this is all if, by the way, if Krejci comes back, Zacha's not going to be the 2C. So I guess this becomes moot. But I'm just saying, if he is with David Pastrnak, they have a history. Yeah. So there is that. There is, I guess, that leg up in the sense. Another interesting take, Fluto Shinzawa had this in The Athletic recently, where he mentioned, he kind of wondered if Zacha is sort of a piece to keep Pastrnak happy. And it's an interesting take just because, obviously right now, Pastrnak would probably be with David Krejci if Krejci returns. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, those guys are not going to be around forever. Krejci will leave again. Bergeron will leave again. And again, the future down the middle, not amazing. And if you want Pastrnak to sign on long-term, part of that might be, hey, who's going to be my center? Marchand has had Bergeron for all these years. Pastrak's probably wondering, who's going to be my next guy? Who's going to be, my wingman, in a sense, down the middle? And again, Zacha has the ingredients with, heritage, playing together, all those things that would mesh with David Pastrnak. I just don't know if that would, I don't know if that's that's what kept him. Pavel Zacha being here, that's what kept him. Because we don't even know what Zacha's contract's going to be. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the issue where I get it, but I don't know if that's going to be I think it helps, but I don't think it would ever be the main thing. I don't, interested to hear what you think about that.
Yeah. It's kind of it's not like the Lakers where it's all right, we're just going to get all of LeBron James's friends and have him be the GM. I don't think it's that, right? And that's not to say too that the Bruins just need to get every single Czech player to make Pastrnak happy. It's not like he's just, only talks to Czech players and like that. He's really, really liked in the room and has a lot of, close connections with the rest of his teammates. So, but yeah, I think, as you said, can't hurt. And it's not one where I think for Pastrnak, who's already expressed, a willingness to stay here, I think it's more or less mapping out the vision of, all right, not saying, all right, Pavel Zacha is your center for the next 5 years. I don't know if that really moves the needle, but in terms of, I think for him, it's just about pitching the future where it's, him and McAvoy and Lindholm and Hall and Marchand at his stage of his career, Lysell and Lowry jumping in when you've got more money off the books, where the Bruins were going to be active in free agency to add more guys. We're in a market that people want to come to. Pavel Zacha doesn't even have to move because he lives in Boston already. So
how convenient is that to get traded to the team that you live at during the summer?
Yeah. So, again, Boston's beyond just the original six history and all that stuff is a market that hockey players want to be in terms of the location, how passionate fans are, the resources here, the amount of pros that are here during the season, the off season, all that stuff. So the Bruins will be active once they have money freed up. Now, is that going to be 2-3 years down the line? But this is a team that if they're looking at, 2025 and you got these guys in place with McAvoy and Pastrnak, they're not going to just let top tier free agents, they're not going to be on the sidelines for those either. So I think for Pastrnak, it's all about, of course, it helps having guys like Zacha and other Czech players there, but Zaboral as well. Yeah. So I think it's one of those things where the most important thing is just mapping out that vision. Because again, I don't think he's a guy who necessarily wants to break the bank here in Boston. I don't think he's a guy that, wants to test free agency. I think he likes playing here. It's just, I think for him, it's making sure they maximize his 28, 29, 30-year-old seasons. He doesn't want to be part of a bottom feeding team at that time. So it's going to be a situation where they have to map out, they have a 5-year plan, which kind of talked about. We need to see what exactly the 5-year plan is. If they're running it back this year, it's a little bit tougher to map out what lies ahead. But I think that's the most important priority for the Bruins and for Pastrnak is, all right, we know you want to be here, but we need to make it worth your while to buy into this team because we don't want you to be wasting your prime years as well.
What do you think Zacha gets on his contract? What do you think he comes out?
I'll go
question of the day. Question of the year.
I'll go 3.25. How about that? Because I think he's arbitrary instead of 3. I'll do 3.25. It's
good bet. I mean, I almost said it's a good bet. It is a good bet, but that is a reasonable number, and that's also not going to break the bank. Because again, I mean, he was it was a $3 million qualifying offer he was supposed to get, so it's coming above 3.
Yeah.
I would say that 3.25. I was worried for like a second. I don't know why I was thinking this, but I was like, I wonder if they're going to do what they did with like Charlie Coyle, where they give him this long-term deal, hoping, because
That's
Sweeney
where it's
kept
concerning.
mentioning.
Yeah.
Sweeney kept mentioning he's got this ceiling. You know, we think he's got so much more to give, and they felt the same way about Coyle. And I was sitting there going, wonder if they're going to give him like a 5-year deal worth like 4.9 or 5 million, where it's like that's a huge ask, because they have not been good with those contracts the past couple of years. It's funny because like you look at contracts like Coyle and Carlo, at the time those look good. And then it was kind of based off like we expect a lot more. We're kind of betting on them in a sense, and it just hasn't really panned out. So hopefully for their cap sake, they do, 1 to 3 years. It'll probably, I would imagine it would be around that at like 3.25. They might do a whole thing where they say, hey, we're going to give you a 1-year deal, 3.25, prove yourself. I wonder if they do that, I mean, I don't know. I feel like you'd rather have.
Feels like you'd rather lock them up, but yeah, no, it's definitely one where it's one of those things where I think the overall, it's so tough to grade that Zacha trade, right? Because we have to figure out one, where he fits in the lineup and what he's getting paid. Because if it's even like 3.5, 3.75, maybe you could justify it. But as you said, if it's all of a sudden it's 4.5, 5 million, you look at where exactly he probably is best maximized on this roster, probably in that on the wing, middle six, can be 2C in a pinch. Then it's easier to kind of map out. But if it's another one that you said like Coyle, then it's okay. That's you're replacing Hall, a cost-controlled veteran, for a guy that's younger, maybe has a higher ceiling, but they're also sacrificing some valuable cap space along the way.
Yeah. Speaking of cap space, by the way, a lot of people are wondering, hey, when are the Bruins going to clear more cap space? Because even though they dumped Holla, they still are actually going to probably have to spend more on Zacha. So like that was not a cap clearing move. It was a good move because they got younger and bigger and all those things, but it was not a cap clearing move. It's funny. Don Sweeney was asked, about his depth on defense last week. He was asked about the buyout market. He kept saying no with buying out players. He said he might change, but he's a no for now. He was asked about defensive depth. He said, it's good to have it. Injuries come up, all this stuff. And you look at the beginning of the year when they're going to be without Marchand, McAvoy, and potentially Grzelcyk, and they could put them all on LTIR if they'd like to. And it's going to be like an extra 19 million in cap space, all three of them. It doesn't feel like they're going to clear cap yet, unless something comes up. Maybe they change courses and Mike Riley gets dealt or Nick Foligno gets bought out, but it doesn't feel like they're going to be clearing cap. Feels like it might be more of LTIR. I'm just curious what they're going to do when those guys come back.
Yeah, that's why I still feel like there's another shoe to drop in terms of, as you said, like maybe a Riley trade or what have you. Because I think if you go in just with the expectation of, all right, we have a little bit of cap flexibility because of LTIR. Okay, so what happens when you get to November and these guys are coming back? It's not like these are guys that are, it's in, their status is up in the air. There's a pretty set, barring any complications, time for when these guys are going to be back. So what happens? Okay, you get to that point in November, you're quite a few dollars over the cap. All right, maybe. Yeah. So at that point, are you putting, let's say Foligno is not bought out, are you putting him down in Providence? It saves you a little bit of money. It's also a very awkward situation. It's almost, I think, worse to send someone down to, Providence as opposed to like just buying out and, cutting the cord now and letting them go somewhere else in free agency. That's an option, but then, all right, you still have to clear up some space. So are you looking at moving a guy like Raleigh then in November, which, okay, you can do that. I'm sure there's plenty of teams that will take a guy with his talents, especially at that $3 million cap hit, off your hands, but you kind of destroyed all your leverage at that point, right? Like, because, all right, we have to get under this cap limit. There's no other way we can do it. What's holds a team from then playing hardball with you and be like, all right, we'll take Riley. He's a good player for a 4th round pick, right? Yeah. Like, even if it's, you move him now and it's a 3rd rounder or something like that, you're still hurting your value a little bit in terms of not taking care of it now as opposed to later. So I know Sweeney said that, they're not looking at, that defense is important, all that stuff. That's true. But also you have Zaboral and Ashan and all these guys here. You at least have bodies. Like, yes. And when it comes to the most pressing issue, yes, you want to make sure you have your ducks in a row in terms of depth and how to prep in case injuries happen, which it's hockey, that will always happen. But you have to, I think, be pragmatic and looking ahead to, you can't, get past this hurdle of the cap space and getting under that limit without moving some guys. So might as well do it now, which is what I imagine. It's the reason why there's a holdup right now, because I think they'd rather get that cap situation somewhat settled, or at least make it a little bit easier to navigate now, as opposed to signing them now and getting to November, and all of a sudden you're stuck in a jam where, all right, like, are we getting to November and they can't activate McAvoy for a game or two because they have to get under the cap limit, which is not good. You'd rather not have that happen. So I have to imagine they're still assessing their options now, as opposed to pushing that kind of down the road, because sooner or later you got to deal with it.
Yeah. And again, even at depth on D, they have so many on the left side. They got like nobody on the right. You're going to have, so Conor Carrick is going to be like your everyday third pairing right shot defenseman until McAvoy comes back. I mean, again, I know they like internal competition. Maybe they put Zaboral on that right side, but it is just one of those things where, I get they have no cap space, or they didn't have much, but on free agency day, I was just kind of surprised they didn't do more on the right side on D. They kind of just got Carrick, they got, Vinny Lettieri for up front. They got Keith Kincaid up, down back. So, again, it's a problem they got to face, as you said, and they lose all the leverage if they go into the season where it's like, we got to get rid of Mike Riley, here's this 5th round pick for him, where he probably could have got you something solid at the draft. You could have got maybe, 2/3 out of him. Maybe. The other thing is you have to wonder, like, they have a lot on the left side at the start of the season. Is Riley going to even be playing every day to start the year? Like, then you've kind of dwindled his value even more, where it's like, yeah, he's played, 12 games so far this year. And, you're not exactly getting someone, someone who's, in the middle of a heater, he hasn't played much this year. So it's an interesting thing. Luckily it's not our job. We just get to sit here and judge it. We don't have to actually do the cap gymnastics. We can sit here and go, hey, this is what you should do. So anyways, Conor, what can people look forward to from you over at Boston Sports Journal?
Yeah, we're going to have you covered every step of the way this offseason. We still have more takeaways, stories from DevCamp from last week, which we'll be breaking down this week. We can head it for, the Bergeron and Krejci contracts, what, as you said, cap gymnastics they might have to deal with there. Plenty of other stuff throughout this offseason as it hopefully starts to slow down a little bit. But all that stuff will be over at bostonsportsjournal.com. So please subscribe over at BSJ. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at ConnorRyan_93.
Go do all that. And remember to go subscribe to Bruins Rinkside if you haven't already. That has been Bruins Beat for this week. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.